Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the book of Job. Now, if you remember when we last talked about Job, which of course has been a couple weeks ago, we were picking up with a young man named Elihu stepping up and speaking out against Job's friends and Job as well, because of how his friends just kind of piled on against Job and about how Job was questioning God. And of course, as he did that, he looked at the greatness of God. So in that aspect, he was correct. But in the way he came at Job, he ended up eventually doing exactly what Job's friends did. So what we're going to read today is Job chapters 37 and 38. And we're going to begin in chapter 37 with the conclusion of Elihu's speech, so to speak. So he is talking about the greatness of God and how we can't even begin to understand how great God is. And so he concluded with a consideration of God's glorious might displayed in his creation. God shows himself exalted in power, and Elihu's questions to Job about how God works his wonders seem to foreshadow God's own coming questions that we're going to hear in chapters 38 through 41 when God himself responds to Job. So even though Elihu was long-winded, his advice to stop and consider God's wonders would turn out to be exactly what Job needed to do. So he wasn't the most helpful in everything that he said to Job, but in the end, he was correct in that he needed to realize where he stood in comparison with the greatness of God and how God was in control, how all the things that God had done, and God was still going to take control of Job, even in this hopeless situation. And so then in chapter 38, we begin the Lord's response to Job. After 38, that's all we're going to read today, but like 39 to 41 are going to be all God's answer to Job, and then the 42 is going to look at what happens to Job in the end. But before we get ahead of ourselves, chapter 38. So after each visitor had his say, the Lord answered Job from the whirlwind. It says in verse 1, where it says, "Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind." And he said, basically, what God did is he took over and did a face-to-face with Job that revealed his awesome sovereignty and power, leaving Job flat on the ground. He said, "Who obscures my counsel with ignorant words? Get ready to answer me like a man." So previously, Job had demanded a hearing with God. So the lesson here is this: be careful what you wish for, because here it is. Don't miss the imbalance of power in this divine confrontation. One night, I'll tell you a story. So this is from Pastor Tony Evans. He said, "One night I encountered a cockroach in my kitchen, only this was no ordinary roach. When I moved toward him, he didn't skitter, he didn't run. He sat there as if to say, 'This is my place.' I couldn't believe it when the thing wouldn't budge. And that stubborn posture meant he clearly didn't understand who I was, and thus I squished that boy flat." So now, what that insect did to him is what autonomous man often does to God. See, we can get roachy on God, kind of dig our heels in, or swaggering around like he's someone like he has power, but it's suicide to get in God's face because only he has ultimate power. Job was questioning God and how God could allow this to happen to him. And in the grand scheme of things, even though Job was a powerful man according to men before all these things happened to him, he was nothing in comparison with God. So when God spoke up and he told Job to stand up and face him, Job's friends were probably just as terrified as Job by God's overwhelming presence and were thankful that he wasn't speaking to them. Yet, at least. But instead of rebuking Job for all of his supposed sins, God began asking him a series of questions. And every one of them was rhetorical because God wasn't interested in Job's answers. In fact, God knew Job wouldn't be able to answer any of his questions. And that was the whole point. So the Lord demanded of Job, we're going to look at some of those questions. Verse 4, "Where were you when I established the earth?" And then for the next two chapters, God asked Job what he knew about creation. Job therefore got kind of like an oral exam of his life. He'd wanted his day in court, and it couldn't have been fun to find himself under cross-examination. How was the world made? What makes the sun rise? Where does the wind come from? Why do the stars shine? Can you command lightning bolts to strike? Do you provide for the animals of the world? Are you able to create a horse? Tell me, if you know all this, don't you know you have lived so long? And that's in verses 18 and 21. So importantly, in a sense, God's questions were an answer to Job's accusations. Not that God needed to defend himself or his actions to Job or to anyone else, really, but as Job pressed God time and again to tell him why he was suffering and why God was punishing him for no reason, at least no reason as far as Job was concerned. Job's attitude became sinful as he began to see his troubles as God's grossly unfair attacks on him. So God used these and the other questions to humble Job and to help him see how truly ignorant he was of God's sovereign wisdom and power. Job didn't understand the reason for his suffering, but God told him, that's only the tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot more that you don't understand. So what we can take from Job, and what we can really take from this whole story, but especially from this and this interaction with God right here in chapter 38, is that when we go through things in life and we start to question, God, where are you? Where is God in this? How could God let this happen? How could God let this happen to my loved one? Why couldn't God heal this person that was sick that I loved? How could God let this happen to me? How could he let this happen to my family, to these people that I know? We don't know. And as humans, as mankind, we have trouble admitting that we just don't know and we can't know, okay? Some things are not meant for us to know. And what God is telling Job is that I know more than you. I am more powerful than you. I am in control. You weren't here when I created this earth. You weren't here to create these animals. You're not the one that feeds them. You're not the one that makes the sun rise in the morning, that makes the stars shine at night. That is me. Those are things that only I can understand, and you could not possibly do them. I am God, is what he says to Job. And he basically wants Job to just understand that in the grand scheme of things, I am in control and you just need to trust me. And that's the lesson for us. When things are spiraling out of control and it feels like God's not there, God is there. God loves us, and God is going to take care of us even if we can't feel it. Even if we don't understand why things are happening the way they are, God is there. God is in control, and God is more powerful than whatever storm, whatever situation, whatever problem you are going through in your life. So remember that as we think about our reading today, as we think about what's going on with Job. Look at the power of God, and as we face our troubles, remember, our God is more powerful than anything this world can throw at us. And so that's all for today. I will see you guys tomorrow back in the book of Jeremiah.